All right, we can go ahead and get started. My name is Riley Hamilton, and I am a Master of Curriculum and Instruction student at Eastern Washington University. And I'm currently participating in Instructional Systems Development in Education 533 for this summer quarter. And today, I am going to take some time and I'm going to discuss some instructional problems that are prevalent amongst educators that are notable and worth talking about. And we're going to go ahead and use this little picture that I've got going on in the background to foreshadow a problem. That problem being time disappearing once we get into our classroom setting. For whatever reason, I cannot seem to find a good description as to why this happens, but the minute that that bell rings, time just seems to fly from the perspective of the educator. Obviously, there is some variation. Maybe you've got a fun trip that you're going on. Maybe it's the last day of school. That can certainly kind of slow that sense of time down. But most days, I feel like there are just not enough minutes, not enough hours to get everything done that we want to get done in the classroom. And that leads to some problems. That leads us to not being able to hit all the standards that we have listed, whether it's in a framework. Maybe we have to leave off in the middle of a lesson. Maybe we teach a few different subjects and one class gets ahead while another class is behind, and we're kind of having to manage the stress of giving everybody back to the same spot in the curriculum. There's so many different layers to this problem that we as educators face. But I want to take some time today to kind of dive into some of the strategies. What are some of the things that we can do as educators to address this dilemma that we all face? I'm going to start out here with a statistic that I was able to do some math and find. Um, right off the bat, I do not agree with this number. There's no way. I think about this and I'm like, where? Like, show me where these minutes are at, because I would argue that it is way less, but when you do the math, it's right there. So the figure that we are looking at right here, 8,660 minutes. That is representative of the total number of minutes in one 50-minute class period over the course of a 180-day academic school year. So the true figure for how much time, how many minutes there are in one 50-minute class session would be more accurate if we were to multiply that by five. Um, and again, right off the bat, my first thought is there's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way that this is how much time that we have. And this figure is representative of um, the occasional snow day, the occasional assembly schedule, fire drill, things that come up. The figure, if we were to not account for that, is actually closer to 10,000 minutes that you would have in one single 50-minute session over the course of the school year. But all those considered, we get about 8,660 minutes to do everything that we need to do to teach these kiddos and to get them moved on to the higher levels and to other classes as they proceed through their academic journey. And again, no way. I don't. I think anybody would look at this. Any educator who has ever been in a classroom would say, "There's no way that this is true." But it's what we've got. It's kind of a lot. When you really sit back, you're like, "Whoa, that is." We spend quite a bit of time in there, do we? Um, so the problem that we're going to be discussing more so today, one that is widely acknowledged by educators, people in the field of education, is the problem of fitting all of the learning that we are wanting to. And all the knowledge that we were wanting to teach to our students into the time constraints that we have as educators. There's only so many hours in the school day. There's only so many school days in the school year. We have what we have, and we have to learn to work with what we have. Um, why this problem? Right off the bat, why did this stand out to me? Um, Maybe not just because I look like this guy here on the screen more often than not when I am planning out. For example, I'm a culinary arts teacher, to put a pin in that. Planning out food labs, trying to think about how we are going to get things done with the upcoming assembly we've got this weekend. Oh, that's right, my buddy's getting married next week. I'm going to be out of town. I got to come up with some sort of activity. And oh shoot, we have the state test, and then it's going to be winter break. Man, we got a lot of stuff that we got to get done. This is something that affects me daily. I am constantly looking at the clock. I probably look up at the clock in any given class period, probably rough ballpark 50 to 60 times a day, and that's being generous, probably more than that. But I was shocked by some of the literature. I was able to identify some statistics, and I found that 84% of teachers that were interviewed about this topic reported that they do not feel like they have enough time in the day to get the things done that they need to get done in their classroom and to teach their students. And that stress is actually a driving factor for what we can identify as the problem of, feeling fatigued, not being able to give your all to a lesson, maybe not being able to finish the things that you had set out to do. Got a lot to do, and this is not countering, or this is not addressing the issue of life outside of school. There's so many things that we have to balance in our time as educators and as our time outside of the school when we take that badge off. Um, Getting behind on grading can certainly change your motivation to get things done in the classroom. You might slow your curriculum down, you might speed it up. Um, Getting behind or feeling like you don't have enough time can certainly affect your lesson planning. And that process of lesson planning, grading, doing paperwork, fulfilling emails, doing those things you need to do can directly cut into your class time because you feel like you're having to catch up with all these things and also teach the kiddos. At the end of the day, we are all there for the students. We're all there to teach the students. But sharing this, it does give you some courage, knowing that we're not alone. We are facing this together. There's so many things that we can do um, to tackle this head on. And one thing that I just want to make clear right off the bat, there is no right answer. That's going to be one key takeaway from this discussion today. There is not one specific answer that I can give to you or that somebody could give to me to help me fit all of the learning that I want to into the time constraints of the school year. Um, there's certainly some things that we can do to address this, but I really wish there was a formula I could make good use of that. Um, there isn't one. There is no right answer. There's only strategies that we can use to really make the most out of the time that we have. So, what are some things that we can do to address this problem as educators? In this little picture, foreshadowing it a little bit, we have to try to do the best that we can to take our time into our own hands. Because if you are not careful, that time will go by and it will be gone, and then we're moving on. Um, I have found myself in that predicament so many times where whether it's I'm that teacher that is so guilty of sending out the school-wide emails. Students out late today. They're showing up with snacks. Teachers are like, seriously, Hamilton, what are you doing? We come on. My class is important too. Um, and this is certainly something I want to get better at. So it really was fun kind of doing some research and thinking about ways to alleviate the stress and manage our time better in the classroom. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've kind of separated these strategies into some categories, and each slide is going to be a category of like things that we can do to address this issue. And this first category is for goal setting and streamlining our instruction. In a previous class that I took, that was a curriculum leadership course. One thing that we stressed in that class, particularly in the first few modules, as far as curriculum design, curriculum leadership goes, is when we are teaching, one thing that we should try to focus on without not making it or without taking away from the personal aspect of teaching, because we're not robots, we're not textbooks. It's unrealistic to expect us to not try to have our own personal flair. But if you can, as an educator, focus on the need to know content, those learning objectives that are going to get students closer towards meeting essential standards, and supplement with the nice to know. I really try to focus on the nice to know when I am, for example, doing a demonstration, preparing something that the students are going to be making later in the week. I'll kind of try to supplement some of that knowledge of things that are nice to know. My first few years, I'm going into year four next year. I will admit I have not been the best at this. I tend to ramble. I tend to tell stories. I tend to um, maybe overshare and stray away from the actual learning objective at hand, which is to accurately scale and measure ingredients. So right off the bat, focus on the need to know. Try to make that your priority, and supplement with a nice to know. This is one strategy that really stood out to me. I'd never thought about this. Really giving yourself a nice visual for what exactly you want to accomplish with your instruction. And the strategy is to set SMART goals. So a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And using that framework to identify what you want to get done, how you're going to get it done. And then we'll talk in a later slide about the evaluation of that. How did I reach my goal? Did I reach my goal? What are some things that I can do differently next time? What's another goal that I could look forward to pursue? Um, and a lot of the literature also pointed out that we as educators, we really need to take that time to plan. My first year, I was guilty of showing up and, okay, we got flour, we've got sugar. What are we going to get done today? Whereas, moving later, of course, that's like first, second month. I don't want to sound like the worst teacher ever. Um, Eventually you figure it out, but really taking time to plan out what you're going to get done in class, whether if you can do it a week ahead. I maybe just my own recommendation would recommend doing it no more than 2 weeks out because you never know, life's going to happen. And you might have to slow things down, you might have to take some things out, some of that maybe not unnecessary, but some of that nice to know content, and really focus on the need to know to get caught up. Um, but take time, make a plan. What are you going to get done this week? What is like the non-negotiables? How can we need to get this done? If we get this done, great. But that is that first category of advice that the literature pointed to. The second one, and this is a strategy that I have started doing. I started it in my undergraduate studies, and then I've really been trying to revamp it this year. And that is the concept of batching and blocking. Um, so specifically looking at lessons, a lesson plan. One piece of advice that I was able to find was to take your lesson plans if you have a really long lesson, and something that is going to be, it's going to take quite a bit of time. Take that lesson and segment it into bite-sized segments. So what we mean by that is something that's manageable. Let's go ahead and take the example of quick breads and students like moving into the quick breads and baking basics unit in a culinary arts classroom. So instead of trying to cram all of that into a week or trying to do all of that in one day, talk about the history of quick breads, different leavening agents, different techniques, and standing there with a presentation and talking about all those things and just, all right, cool, we're good, we're moving on, let's start cooking, blah 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 blah. The rest of the week, let's just cook, let's just get in there. um, Take it and segment it into a manageable task. So maybe one day we're going to go ahead and talk about the history of it, the history of quick breads. And then the next day we're going to have a hands-on interactive activity to kind of have the students working and looking up different quick breads, looking up different types of recipes that might fall into this category. And then we're going to do a lab on the next day, not trying to overload our students with information, which is another instructional design problem that can ensue if we do not take time to kind of manage our lessons and batch them. Um, the second one I would like to hit on, time blocking. There are some apps, for example, in the Google Calendars app that will do this for you, which is really nice. It'll kind of give you a visual of what all you need to do in the day. And my advice to people that are going to pursue this in their life for time blocking is to actually set the things that have to do with, for in our context, education. What are things that you're going to get done during these hours? For example, we can see over here on the right side of the figure, the time is blocked from 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2. This is a very standard framework. This is a very standard approach to time blocking. If you know, and I'll use my example, if I know that from 2 to 3:30 I'm going to be at the gym, I'm going to write that in, even if it has nothing to do with school, because I know that during those hours I'm not going to be able to get anything done. I'm at the gym, and I want to make time for myself to be able to do that. We try to stray away from the habit, if you're ADHD, very much like myself, on the left side of the figure, of taking what could be done in one segment, one one time frame, maybe it's an hour or two, and spreading it out throughout the day, and then going back with another task that's in another category, for example, the green and the blue category, and kind of hitting on what you need to do in this category. Okay, well, I'm going to grade for this time, and then okay, and then I'm going to answer some emails during the next few minutes, and then oh, that's right, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and print those out. I'm going to send that email. Oh, that's right. I got a plan for my evaluation coming up next week. I should email my administrator and let them know, like, here's what we're going to do. Email them the lesson plan. And okay, and then I'm going to write a grocery list after this next 10 minutes. I do that all the time. I have been so guilty of not really taking time to really block it out. And we know that when we do this, the literature points to if you actually block your time out and just say non-negotiable for 2 hours, I'm working on grading. I'm going to organize my grade book. I'm going to get things structured for the. I might even post ahead what we're going to be grading in the next few weeks. I'm not going to grade it yet because we haven't done it, but I'm going to get that done. And then I'm going to move on to lesson planning. I'm going to start thinking about what we can get done. And go from there and so on. You can kind of get a sense for what I'm getting at. Not going back and forth is going to give you a lot more likelihood of being successful in actually getting the things done that you need to get done so that you can teach and fit that learning into the time that you have. So that was a nice little ramble. As you can see, you can probably see that why now I fall into the left side of the category. But I'm working on it. We're trying. And here's that evaluation component. Going back to setting our goals, looking at what actually happened in our class versus what we set out to accomplish. Did it work? What are some things that went good? What went bad? We need to take time to do that. That is a critical aspect of instructional design in and of itself. Another strategy is optimizing student engagement in our classroom. Easier said than done. This is something that I'm actually currently writing a paper on for another course that I'm taking. But what are some ways that right off the bat we can get students ready to rock and roll and go in and start with a bang. The literature is pointing towards how effective warm-ups are for getting students ready to learn, getting them kind of oriented towards instruction. And this can be something super easy. We as educators are pretty familiar with entry tasks, something to activate that prior knowledge, something that maybe we talked about the day before, something that it would be helpful if it's relevant to their lives and their context to kind of really help them, see the connection of how what we're learning in class connects with them as a student and as a individual. Start with something like that, set the tone, and use that to engage your students and to gain momentum into the actual lesson. Um, Another way that we can engage students is to incorporate some non-traditional, or what we would call non-traditional instructional designs, whether it's a flipped classroom. So having your students review some content at an earlier time. Everyone has their perspective on homework. I would even argue that, man, I'm gonna make them watch a demo at home and then come in the day later and then expect them to know what's going on. But studies show that it works. It is a way to engage your students rather than trying to fit everything in. Use some of that time. I might recommend that if you're going to use some of that time outside of school when it's family time, just be mindful. I mean, think about what you're doing when you're at home. Are you wanting to think about school? I mean, we as educators, we often have to. We have just so much to get done that we have to think about it. But I mean, there is a thing called work-life balance. There is a school-life balance that you have to take into mind. But the flipped classroom approach I have found to be super interesting. I have not ultimately integrated it in the way that it is recommended, but I can see how it would be helpful. And I'm very familiar with this in my undergraduate studies. This was a instructional design that a lot of my professors used, and it was interesting. It was interesting, and it was fun to work with. Peer teaching, moving on to that next non-traditional design, having the students take the learning in their own hands, teach each other to kind of move things forward so they're not relying on you as their sole source of information the whole time that they are in your class, having them rely on each other and incorporating project-based learning aspects. As a CTE teacher, this is something that I'm kind of starting to gain some familiarity with, and using that to really extend the learning and to incorporate the content. into a activity that is going to, just advance them towards meeting that learning standard or moving that learning target. Project-based learning is a lot of fun. I would highly recommend looking into that. And it is something that you really, really can cram a lot of content in it and have those students engaging with it if you design it right. Um, this last slide, just some additional things that I kind of wanted to highlight on before I finish this off. Um, I really like this tip. This inspired me. I need to do this. I tell myself I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to hold myself accountable, and I actually do need to incorporate this strategy. So the strategy at hand is to generate a collection of short activities. Doesn't need to be anything crazy. 10 to 15 minutes. I bought a whole book for this last year and started reading through it and have tried to incorporate those, but fallen short. Um, Take these short activities and you use that to supplement additional time that you have in your classroom because I have certainly noticed there's days where it's like holy cow, how has it already been 50 minutes, or oh okay, well, let's get cleaned up, let's go and get ready to rock and roll, you guys, we got to get you moving on. And then there's days where there's definitely a lot of time left over. Well, that would be a good time to one, supplement with a nice to know, but two, you can take your need to know and find a 10 to 15 minute window where you can address some of that need to know in a way that is streamlined if possible. Um, this is all just if it's possible. We know how complex teaching is, and if you don't, um, it can be a little tricky. Um, be reflective and willing to change, acknowledge what works, acknowledge what does not work. Always try to be better at what you are doing, and really going back to that first slide, that kind of segued into these strategies. It's never going to be perfect, there's no right answer, but it does start with being considerate of all these things that you can do. You can't, you're not alone, you can do this. You can make this work. You can take that time into your own hands. Um, I love this quote right here: perfectionism is the enemy of progress. As long as you're making progress, that is all that you can do at the end of the day is just work towards that goal of trying to be more efficient. If you give up on it and if you just decide, I'm never going to get it, I'm never going to do it, there's never going to be enough time. I feel like that's kind of the wrong way to look at it. But I do not, if you are finding yourself in that position, if that's your attitude, I have nothing bad to say about you. I've been there. I feel, I go in waves from feeling like, oh, there's nothing I can do, and I can do this. But something like this, taking time to research it, really does help. So you got this. You can do this. Here's some of the references that I was able to use to identify this information. Um, and yeah, it was really good to take time to reflect on this. So I wish you the best of luck. I'm excited to use this, and I'm happy to share the information that I was able to share with you today. So have a great day and keep on doing your thing.